And again, answering are the Eagles.
Gatto now for three. That's two in a row for the freshman. The steal, the spin, behind the back, splitting the double team.
Ryan Thomas with a jam.
Baxter with authority for his first points of the night. That could be an SC top 10.
What's going on, guys? This is Elliot Cressy on the mic, as always, joined by co-host Russell Kelly.
As always,
per
my last email.
Man, I always got... actually, I've got to the point now where I'm not offended by when someone says, as discussed, or per our phone call, or...
I feel like I became offended at that. At first, when I saw it, I wasn't. I was like, ooh, I'm going to use this. That was like my first thought. But then it was like, okay, I see they're being a little bit snarky.
It all boils down to who did they CC on the email.
Yeah, that's fair.
If it was just you, I don't care. If it was me and
your supervisor,
my coworker, I don't care. If it's me and my superior, my supervisor, I'm like, eh.
And they CC'd you on a forward of like the last email they sent you or something, so that they're.
But at the same time, if your boss loves you, then you're doing the right thing. Then
yeah.
So on this pod, we're gonna get right down to business. Nothing else has gone on in our lives. It's the same old crap. We wasted your time the last two podcasts with 10 minutes of
dogs and
talking about dogs, bikes, or something else.
Trikes.
Nah, no trikes yet.
No.
We had the very special privilege of talking with Commissioner Gumbart of the ASUN, because that's what FGCU plays in. It was a very good conversation. Learned a lot of insight and kind of behind the scenes on what's going on from a administrative standpoint in the conference. Regarding COVID-19.
Right. Obviously. The decision-making processes and all those things. Plus, you're probably, sick of hearing us talk about things. So we could seek counsel of the actual commissioner to give us the latest and greatest.
So without further ado, let's just jump right in and tune in for the end, because we got a special song.
What are we singing?
No.
Okay, good.
All right, and tonight we welcome very special guest, ASUN Commissioner Ted Gumbart. Welcome to the pod, Ted. How are you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's great to do my debut on the Screecher Report. And the answer, the company line these days, when people ask how you doing, it's like, I'm healthy, I'm employed, and sanity was never really determined to begin with. So I think I'm doing okay.
Those are three really good points, and I'm glad you're doing well in all three. So
I hope they're waiting for you. How are you guys doing?
We're doing just as good and about the same. If you ask us, we're both still working and doing the best we can in these times. But wanted to ask you, kind of going into the first question, with all the uncertainty and speculation surrounding, the return of college sports, how are things going? And I'm sure what is the strangest time possibly in your professional career?
I think things are going as well as possible for the ASUN given the circumstances. And, that doesn't mean it's a great situation, but I think everybody that, from students to administrators to coaches to presidents, have all been great. Even, all the support staff as compliance people and training staff, everybody wants to compete. So we understand that. And everybody wants to do it safely. We understand that. So that's the rub. Can we compete safely? And our approach is really down to, we've got to ensure that those that compete, you send them out on the playing field or the court, that the healthy are able to compete and those that are infected are separated. That's simple. Separate the healthy from the infected and let the healthy play. But that's, there's so much to that as far as testing and accuracy and false positives and tracing if you do get a positive and how long you have to stay out if you get a positive. And the bottom line is we don't want to jeopardize the campus health by conducting athletics. And until we figure out that we can do it without jeopardizing campus health, as well as any individual that's on a team, we're still on a holding pattern. And we postponed, we didn't cancel, so we still hope to play in the spring. But as far as, what's the status, great disappointment from everyone. We're all vested in playing. That's what we do. We provide opportunities. And, if players can't play and coaches can't coach, we're obviously in a not normal time, and not normal in a sense that it's not enjoyable.
Right. And, just out of curiosity, there's concern about, can the general, school population and campus and stuff stay safe if the sports are occurring? But what's the concern like the other way around, like with masses of students coming back to campus? How does that, affect the potential health of the players in your perspective?
I think that one of the things that we've agreed on from the very beginning, even when it was back to March and canceling the NCAA tournament last spring, was that athletics is part of the higher educational experience. We consider ourselves in higher ed, and our pathway is through athletics. But we believe that the lessons learned as being part of a team, and whether it's part of a band or part of a debate team or an athletic team, that there's great value in that educational experience, but that we're part of a university first. So if we don't have a safe university setting and you're not conducting classes and we don't have residents on campus, then athletics is not ready to go. We're part of the campus, not apart from the campus. So number one, we need that. So we need all the students to come back. We need to see how it affects, the spread of the virus. And we need to learn how to contain it and live with it, because it's not going away, not anytime soon. Now, maybe we'll get a vaccine. This is still a very young disease. We only have, 8 months of data that we've collected on it, maybe a little bit more. And most of that data is on hospitalized, vulnerable patients. So how it affects athletes, there's very little data, and it's just being developed in the last month or so, where people come back and attempt to practice. And now we've got students coming back. So it's part of a learning live lab. Everybody wants to stay safe and mitigate the spread. But we've also had incidences across the country where, you have a party that was ill-advised. Everybody goes to a wedding because it's a once in a lifetime, and let's just do this one thing. And, they bring, all of a sudden 80% of them have COVID, and then you got to trace. If somebody on your team gets it, it's not hard to figure out who they've been spending time with. They've been spending time with their teammates. So we just need to still learn a little bit more before we're comfortable saying we know how to separate the infected from the healthy, and still more to learn, and we're all in it together. I mean, all of our schools have been very cooperative, very open, and that's one thing I'm very proud of, that we've been open to every question, tried to get answers, and we realize that uncertainty is not a comfortable environment to exist in. I mean, especially if you're a type A driven personality, which some coaches and athletes are, that knowing and organizing and planning is part of the discipline that makes them successful. And without that certainty, you've lost the discipline, and then you lose, a little bit of what it means to compete. So it's very uncomfortable times, but again, you have to deal with what the environment brings.
For certain. It seems like there's a few conferences that are on the same page, and maybe that's because they're, located in the same region to the same extent. But is there a particular major conference or a directive that the ASUN's following, and can you take us through some of the steps of that process and how is that panning out on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I tell you, the day-to-day is accurate because, we're on calls, either me or staff members or your staff members with others every day, and whether it's the compliance group today or the trainers tomorrow and the ADs the next day and the presidents the next day. Yes, it is day to day. And then even the technology changes. If you're a college sports fan, you're reading, hey, what are they doing with the WNBA and the NBA? And what are they doing with NHL? What are they doing with, Major League Baseball? And, they've had to lose a number of games because people didn't follow what the guidelines were and brought COVID into the clubhouse. So the day-to-day, 100% accurate. And then how do we follow it? We've plugged in now to the NCAA's protocols because they are going to be the standard if we're going to play NCAA championships. And that's even if we move fall to the spring or basketball, that there's going to have to be a mutual agreement. And if we're going to play some SEC teams, for example, whether it's baseball, softball, basketball, or anything else, they're wanting to know what our protocol is. And so we're probably going to follow the national standard, but that is evolving, and we expect it to evolve. And what people are calling the POC, point of contact or point of care testing, is different than getting a swab from the back of your throat, putting it in a tube, sealing it, labeling it, and sending it to a lab, and then they test it, and then they give you the results. That's a laboratory test that you have to overnight ship. But the point of care is something that could be at the game. And whether you're playing football or basketball, the ability to test and say, hey, look, we're having a training meal at 10 and the game's at, 2. Then at that meal, you test everybody before they go sit down to eat the training meal. And if they're positive, you get them out of there. And if they're negative, they're cleared to play. That's a pretty good way to separate. And then you go sit down, have your meal, and nobody else interacts with anybody else outside that group. And whether they're a coach or anybody else, that's a clean group. And the other team does the same thing. Now we can put those people on the floor, and, we'll have to cover the officials and anybody at the table where you come in and check in, and you're, inside that 6-foot bubble with a lot of people. But I think that's very doable. But if you have to send a lab test and it's 36 to 72 hours, you have no idea what everybody does during those 2 days, and especially if you have to travel. Where were you traveling? You in an airport, hotel, restaurant? That's not a good situation. But if we can test on game day and separate folks, that's doable. And in fact, I think it will make the athletic participants more careful, knowing that their playing time is at risk if they don't behave. That I think it'll actually lower the risk of spreading it on campus. If we don't have sports and just say, hey, we're not even going to practice, you're all free students this semester, I think that would remove some discipline that's helping. And I think that would actually be more cases. So again, it's all conjecture, but we will follow the NCAA's national standards. We will help influence their adoption of some other options. And, of course, we've got partnerships with the SEC in officiating, so we kind of have spoken with them a lot about how we're handling officials, checks and how that should be done, so we get good information there. And everybody's been really good about sharing. And the Pac-12 actually has a plan to buy a number of those POC testing devices, so each of their schools can have them and they can do the testing but their orders are delayed because the company that manufactures them, and once they got I don't know if it's FDA approval and then CDC stamp of approval, they're in high demand, so they're going first to nursing homes and places like that, which is entirely appropriate. But yeah, we're in touch with a lot of folks. We all have campus medical teams, and we have a conference medical team, and we don't want to do things twice if it's already been done, but we want to coordinate that baseline so every one of our campuses is comfortable sending their student athletes from one ASUN school to the other.
Right. And I mean, it's totally true that like a on-site game day test is totally a game changer for, the ability to play any kind of sports going forward in the near future. Everything is subject to change with new information and new testing available and all of that. But there's so many things, ideas floating around. Like you say, everything's conjecture at this point. But, whether it's playing only a conference season in basketball and other winter sports per se, or, just anything like that. I mean, what kind of goes into the decision making? What kind of things are being talked about? Obviously, like I said, things are subject to change, but I mean, what kind of options are out there?
Well, hey, I'm glad you asked, and the points you made about you have to stay flexible, and the environment's going to change. So anything we think is certain today, we better be ready to amend tomorrow. I mean, you're right on it. I mean, you could probably sit in, and fans, they think like, hey, did you think of this? Well, probably, but there has been great spectrum of ideas, and then you have to narrow it down, and you say, how do you narrow it down? So one is just, is it feasible? Is it even workable? So let's take basketball. Can we move the Final Four for men and women's basketball? It's feasible, but what would happen? Are we going to have fans or not? We don't know that. But saying, hey, what if you can't start on time? So you start late, you should just end late and give everybody the chance to play the full season. Well, the people that run the Final Four, and Dan Gavitt is a tremendous asset to the NCAA, who runs, he's the senior vice president, and he oversees basketball, men and women. And if he tells us, and we have meetings and we share ideas, and in fact, yesterday they came out with a timeline, said, hey, we need to decide the start of practice and the start of the season no later than the middle of September. And there's lots of reasons for that. But some of the constraints are the end. And if they come back and say, well, we could move the Final Four, that's conceivable. But then here's something that is a factor. And if you've ever been in any kind of advertising relationship, you know that the Final Four time is one of the highest values for ad inventory. And that's why it generates so much money. And that's why that money funds the NCAA, and it funds their distribution. So if they move it, you're taking the highest value inventory out of its spot. So now you have a big open spot where nothing is sold, and you move it to somewhere in the calendar where you already have events and you've sold the inventory, and now you're dumping in the NCAA inventory. So just by definition, our television partners will want to renegotiate. They said, well, we could move it and we'll still televise it, but we can't pay you the same amount because we won't realize the same amount in ad revenue. You're leaving us with a big hole here in first weekend in April, and you're doubling us up somewhere else where we've already got it. And yes, it's a crazy year, and a lot of things are changing in flex. But that's a really big part of the decision for a conference like us, because the NCAA funds all of their revenue distribution. We get money for sports sponsorship. FGCU, for instance, they get money based on how many scholarships they give. They get money based on their academic achievement. If they're an APR qualifier, academic progress rate, And all of those funds were cut to 31% last year, except one. 8 out of 9 funds were cut to 31%. And if that happens again this coming year, the loss of that revenue, it won't matter whether we've moved championships from the fall to the spring, because we don't have the money to support the program. It's really the existence, our blood, our lifeline is that NCAA basketball championship. So we have talked about everything, and no matter what, we want to play, unless we're putting the kids at risk. If we're not putting them at risk, then we got to play. And, we'll find a way. We start in November, or we'll start in December, or we'll start in January. And yes, if we play conference only, then what does the tournament look like? It'll be a different year. That's for sure. You'll still have all the AQs because every conference is guaranteed a spot. But what do you do with the rest of the field? And if you play conference only, let's say FGCU. We play the 16 conference games. They go 15-1. That's pretty good. Don't you think, unless you're 16-0, you should be ranked below FGCU? So maybe we should get a 2 seed this year, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about it.
Yeah. So anyway, there's just a lot of different stuff, and that's just it's going to be an odd equation, and we're trying to get the details before you vote in the big thing. Right now, that call I was on just before I got on with you was about moving the fall sport championships into the spring, and it seems like groups are supporting that, but we don't have the answers to, are you guaranteeing us AQ access? Because they're thinking of a 50% bracket in, for instance, women's soccer, which would mean instead of a 64-team field, we only have time and resources to play a 32-team field. There's just not enough weeks. We can't fit it in while we're trying to play spring sports, and so it's 32. Well, from our standpoint, and the group I was on with is called the CCA 22. CCA is the Collegiate Commissioners Association. There's 32 of them across the country. 22 of them do not play bowl-level football. So basketball is the highest, income for them. And so these 22 were discussing what are the conditions on which we should support moving fall sports to the spring. And one of them is guaranteed access. If you're not going to guarantee us access, then it's not an NCAA championship, and therefore we don't think you should conduct it.
Right. And, monetary value, financials is such a big part of this. And, there's no denying that. And, I'm kind of curious. It's most schools, obviously, in conferences host football. The ASUN, doesn't. There's been partnerships that allow that, but FGCU in particular does not. But, in schools that do host football is typically that athletic department's, main source of income. But, for teams like FGCU that don't have football, basketball is absolutely the main source of monetary gain. So do you think it's maybe more or less beneficial to not have a football team as your main source of income in these times where it might not be played in the fall?
Well, I'll give you a little perspective. I can't answer, whether, it's better or worse or where you are, because everyone's campus situation and their plans are different, and their heritage and their, affiliation with their alums. FGCU is such a young institution. You guys are unique in so many ways. Still, we talk about the Flutie effect. That's the term that, one athletic event can change the face of a university for decades. And, that's FGCU's Sweet 16. I mean, that we should call it the FGCU effect. And I think that's great. But let me tell you about the football situation. It's really only the top people that make money, but the others, it's part of the fabric of their campus and what they do. They bring so many people to the games. that are donors and, maybe they, don't support athletics as much as they support something else, but it's built in and it's part of their campus activity that they need to conduct. And so if you don't have football, now the losses we're calculating and the cuts we're making to get through our budget as an ASUN, they're doable. And having a reserve that we have that would allow us to operate for 2 years without the NCAA money is an achievable situation. Now, when the big guys don't play their guarantee games, because you said, all right, ACC, SEC, we're playing conference only. And then you read about the Sun Belt where some school says, that's going to cost me, $1.1 million. I have a guarantee game, and you bet I'm pursuing that contract. Well, stop and think. If LSU can have a home game and pay you $1 million to come down and take your whooping down there, think how much they are making. How much are they making if they can afford? So their deals for season ticket holders, for television, for advertisers is millions. And, even from the conference, they give out, 40 to 50, I don't know what the record distribution was, million to every school. So if you're the SEC, and let's just say 50 as a round number, and you got 14 schools, so what, you give out $700 million? You distributed more than the NCAA distributes. And if you can't play football, that money's not coming in. So I'd much rather deal with, $100,000 problem than $100 million problem. And so whether you have a football program or not, definitely changes the equation. But when you're lean and mean like the ASUN, we can handle a rough time, and it doesn't change us too much. We can get through it. If those big boys don't play football, there's no justification for what they're paying their football staff. You're paying coordinators millions, and head coaches multiple millions. How do you pay for that? Maybe the very top have boosters that will fill the gap. But without the games, that income's gone forever. You can come back and play games later, but yeah, that's an amazingly difficult place to be. And I guess for today anyway, I'm glad we are a basketball first conference.
Right. And speaking of the changes moving forward with the ASUN, I know recently or earlier this year, you were talking about the future plans for the conference and what we're trying to get out of future teams and additions and maybe a split in the conference. How does all of this affect, the announcement that the ASUN would be partnering to make a 20-team conference? And then, COVID-19 aside, can you sort of explain what the plan is with that?
Yeah, and let me refer to it as a blueprint. You get a blueprint to build a house, and then someone says, yeah, you know what, let's save a little money. I don't want to do that huge bay window. Let's just do a straight thing here. And the sauna, I didn't make as much money as I thought in the stock market, so cut the sauna out of my blueprint. So a blueprint is the starting point and has to be adjusted. We have already adjusted it, just without getting into boring details that'll have people turning you off. When we released NJIT, which was our voluntary decision, and under COVID, it just made that was the right thing to do. It changed some of our options, but we can still partner with some folks and do some of the same things. But we are focused on expansion, divisional play, and focus on football, because we either get it sponsored or we have to realize our football playing schools, may be in the market for a football home. But geography and costs and rivalries factor into it. Management of the conference, the fiscal sustainability of the conference, and some of our future plans, whether people want to participate or not. I would say we had some people back away when COVID hit, they don't know what their enrollment's going to be this fall. How many will actually matriculate? Will they be able to get through a full semester? Will they be able to, charge full fees for being on campus and getting room and board? That is huge. And so some schools said, look, until I know what my enrollment is and what my room and board, cash flow is going to be, we're just not entertaining, that move. Others, for the same reason as NJIT, moved out of the ASUN, have some interest in the ASUN. So, the blueprint is in modification, but there's still active discussions on how we can build a stronger ASUN. Because all of those plans, in the bottom line, they have to benefit the 9 members we have today. So those 9 members are the most important, and if we can preserve their allegiance by providing a football league or providing divisional play, which will allow, some savings in travel, then those are things we're still looking at, still think they're viable, and, hopefully that there'll be some exciting opportunities for us. And when asked how confident I am that we'll be able to add schools, in the next year or two, the plan we had was called ASUN 23 because it was meant to take full effect in 2023 for a number of reasons. And how confident are we can get some expansion before then? Confident enough to release NJIT. We never like to lose a school, but that was a situation where if we're truly students first, our students and their students are, better staying locally and not getting on airplanes. It just wasn't feasible. But we were confident enough to do that without feeling there's any jeopardy to the long-term success of the ASUN.
And I mean, about the ASUN in general, you've obviously been a part of it since before it was even called the ASUN, but and I believe you became commissioner in 2007. FGCU joined, became D1 in 2011. So, I mean, you've seen the ASUN up close for a lot of time prior to FGCU, as well as, since they've been a mainstay. And, can you speak to the level of competition, in all the sports, specifically basketball as well, and how that sort of has progressed up to this point? Because it always seems like, it's a really close race by at least a few teams in basically every sport.
Yeah, thanks for the lead in on that. We're extremely proud of the progress we've made competitively over the last few years. We set different records of most, participants in the NCAA, if you count at large, berths that we had in different sports and individuals that advanced to, the golf finals or the cross country finals, not just the first round. That we've set records, in most appearances. We set records in most wins in postseason play. And then we had, every one of our sports collect a win. And I don't know if it's the last 3 or 4 years, but all of those things were new thresholds for us. And in fact, we actually instituted a new award called the Beam Award that the ASUN Beam, that you've done something above and beyond that we've never done before. We have 4 beams. Students first is our primary number 1 beam. The other 3 are impact, connect, rise. So when we go to those tournaments and we win in ways we've never done before, hey, that's rise because we're raising our strength and our achievement. And, it's definitely impact because it impacts everybody. If you want to win, and we have a very competitive group. Our ADs want to win, our coaches want to win, our students want to win. And you say, well, doesn't everybody? And I'm like, well, I don't know, but it's a grand thirst to win. And like FGCU, Carl's a tremendous coach for women's basketball. He's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's done stuff that, only the people like Gino Auriemma have done. And so everybody wants to knock them off, and that makes everybody want to get better. And Stetson had a chance and beaten them a time or two. Jacksonville beat them a time or two to take a bit away. And, Liberty's been on their heels lately. So yes, it makes everybody better when you set the standard high. And so Stetson, they played baseball. They were a top 10 team, and hosted a regional and won it and went to the super regional. And, they needed a few more feet on a ninth inning hit that would have gone over the fence, and maybe they would have made the World Series. So, absolutely a point of pride, and we credit, it's from the presidents down. They make the commitment. They provide the resources and the tools. Then the ADs have to deploy them as they see fit, whether it's hiring new coaches or extending, facilities or, adding scholarships. It's a different equation everywhere, but I think we've got just a great group of competitive folks that are willing to share to make the ASUN stronger. So yeah, it's been a very rewarding time, and it's gratifying when you get to make reach new heights. We had our first national championship when a Kennesaw State hammer thrower. He won the national championship, the best hammer thrower in the country, in Kennesaw State in the ASUN. And we had people in the national championships, almost routinely in golf every year, teams and individuals. And so, yes, from FGCU's entrance, I think you could mark that day that the bar continues to be set higher and people continue to pursue it, because that's what competitive folks do.
Yeah, at the collegiate level and beyond, and pro and Olympians and such, but especially in men's basketball in the last decade, we've seen, the powerhouses that have come through, whether that's East Tennessee State, Belmont, Mercer, FGCU recently, and this year has to be one of the most wide open years for the ASUN in men's basketball, simply because you have a lot of changes in some of the powerhouse teams of recent, like Stetson looks to be on the rise. Lipscomb is a strong contender. Liberty and UNF lost a ton of talent, but they deserve a benefit of the doubt, especially Liberty being the defending champ. So the potential for competitiveness this year has to definitely intrigue you as a fan.
Yeah, it really does. I think you're exactly right. And on the men's side, you mentioned specifically that Lipscomb and Stetson are stronger. Those coaches are entering their second year, and no matter what, first-year coach, you've got a lot of players that you didn't recruit, and you've got to reteach them the way you see successful basketball being played. And second year, you get to have some people that know your system, and then the kids teach it to the next class as much as the coach does. And North Alabama, Tony Pujols has got that group coming. They played with 4 freshmen their first year, so they're coming into their third year. They're going to be stronger. They're not going to be afraid of anybody. And I just think you're right. It's going to be a really competitive season. Love Matt Driscoll at UNF. He's a dynamic coach that gets the most out of his kids. I've never bet against them on any game. Of course, I don't bet on any games.
Yeah, you're not allowed.
You're exactly right. And you know what? It's because we've got really good coaches. If you don't have that, it's hard to have a winning program, because that's the person that leads it. And same on the women's side. We've got a good core of teams that have been solid, but when your league wants to prove itself, you need the bottom half of the league to be posting some competitive wins. And, UNA came into our league, their first Division I game, they beat, maybe it wasn't their first, but they beat Vanderbilt. I'm like, are you kidding me? That made us look so smart. We need UNA. So that was great. But the competition is going to be extremely tight, which makes it great. I love it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting, and everyone's looking forward to it, COVID willing. But, not just to wrap everything up kind of on an FGCU note, the women, obviously basketball seem to retool every single year. They find new ways to keep dominating. It's very, very Belichick Patriots dynastic almost. But, a new band of characters and same result. And the men's team recently, it's a bit of a transformation, switching to Coach Michael Fly, new brand of basketball, new players, try to fit the system. From your vantage point, where's the arrow pointing for FGCU heading into year 3 under Coach Fly? And, is it looking like it's getting back to the glory days at some point here soon?
Yeah, I think Michael's a great basketball mind, and if there's something that's not working, he will dive in and help figure it out. I think he's just so driven. I mentioned the competitive juices and the network he has for people to help put that program on the right track again. And again, even the wins weren't there, but you could see just the size and speed of an FGCU team. So yeah, that arrow is definitely going up. And I think that's part of what makes the league great is when you have a team that has established itself as the leader and people want to knock them off. So let's switch over to women. And as I said, Carl's a Hall of Fame coach, and the ability to put a team together that the most amazing thing, in addition to their skill, their discipline, their dedication to running the system and trusting it and not breaking out to try to do their own thing. The system is designed to compete against any type of opponent. You face a team with lots of size and long reach. It's like, all right, well, we'll just step back here and shoot threes. And if you come out, you create gaps. And if you're big, probably you're not as fast as me. So there's gaps, and you shoot the gaps, and you hit the cutter, and there's always a second option. If you can't get there, there's, a dish. He's just so good that, I love to watch him play. I'm a real basketball fan, and I love to see team play. And I would expect that because he's there, you're the favorite, and there's no reason to think otherwise. There's always been talent, and they've always performed. They're clutch. They can run sets. They can run, fast breaks. They're just so much fun to watch. And that's why all the rest of the teams in the league want to beat them. If you ask them, say, what team do you want to beat? Almost all, if not all, will say, I want to beat FGCU. And that's great. That's the competitive fire. So we thank you guys for setting the bar. Everybody that attends games is part of that. Everybody that goes to school there is part of that. Everybody in the athletic department is part of that. But obviously, the coach and the players, that's where it happens. And they should be congratulated for setting the bar so high. And I tell Carl that every time I see him. I say, "Thanks, man. We're glad you're with us. We hate to face you on the other side."
Right, and I mean, we're so thankful at FGCU for the success that the women always have. I mean, especially considering the couple of down years that the men had. Nobody's taking the women's success for granted. That's for sure. But yeah, that's all the questions we have. We absolutely appreciate you coming on and, talking, the potential plans for the future games, any possibility of 2020 or 2021, sporting going on. But we appreciate you coming on for sure.
Yeah, great conversation. And again, we appreciate it. And looking forward to hopefully get back to ASUN sports and sports in general for college.
Absolutely. We need to, and I'm looking forward to that as well. So let's close. I got to do some Twitter work this evening to answer some questions. One of the things we're having fun with is naming songs that have sun as either part of the title or part of the lyrics. So I'm putting you guys on the spot. One of you, either Russell or Elliot's got to come up with a song with sun a reference so we can see if we can add that to our list.
Sun as in like what shines and makes things bright, or like a dad's kid?
S-U-N, like the
Okay.
ASUN.
Oh, that makes sense.
You know, like Katrina and the Waves. I'm dancing on sunshine.
Oh, you got one.
I got one. So you guys need to give me one. I need one. Come on.
The first one I thought of, and I don't know how popular of a song it is, but "Steal My Sunshine" by
Len. It was a 90s one-hit wonder. Steal My Sunshine.
Yeah, I like it. I'm a big one-hit wonder fan.
Oh, yeah. The 90s were all about that, so.
Hey, guys, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I love bragging on our schools and bragging on our student athletes. 70% of them are on the honor roll. So we love bragging on them. And anytime you need some filler, I'm glad to come on again.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it, and I hope to talk again in the future.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you later.
Well, that was Commissioner Ted Gumbart from the ASUN. I want to thank him for coming on. Lots of good stuff there. I hope you enjoyed. But real big shout out to Elliot, because I was totally drawing a blank on that song titles with sun in it. I'm usually good with that stuff, but you came in clutch.
Yeah, I mean, I know we ask questions and put our interviewees on the spot, but that really put me on the spot. And I was like, man, a song with sun.
Right.
Steal My Sunshine by Len.
Yeah.
I was hoping people got it. He understood it, so,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. If you were 6 or older in the 90s, you probably know that song. There's a good chance.
Right.
One hit wonder, but it's a bop.
It's a bop for show.
Uh-huh.
Well, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. That
That was his phone.
probably couldn't hear it. Yeah. Hoping we can have some sports.
We'll have a few more guests on, I'm sure. I just released today, actually, or depending on when you're hearing this, a couple days ago, the 6th of 6 Fresh Faces installments. It was a introduction to Eli Abiv. And yeah, good stuff in there. I talked to his coach from East Florida State College, where he played with Jalen Warren, and insight from Coach Fly, as well as one of those new to the nest interviews that Jalen did with him. So good stuff there. Give it a look. But we'll have some more articles coming out. I got another series planned for like the latter half of I guess it won't be summer, but the beginning of the fall leading into the season, and a couple of, one-offs as well. So stay tuned.
Yeah, Trusty Rusty's got some big plans.
Nobody's ever called me that.
Oh, I just did.
Okay.
You're trustworthy.
Trending.
Trendy.
Get it trending on Twitter.
I don't get it.
Trusty Rusty. Like hashtag.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't actually.
Let's get it going. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Catch you on the next one.